This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
City University Television presents the American Theater Wing Seminars. Working in the theater. This seminar, Design.
Welcome to the American Theater Wing Seminars on Working in the Theater. This is the 23rd year that we've brought these seminars to you, and they come from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. This seminar is on design, and the panelists today have just received the 1996-97 American Theater Wing Award for Best Design. They get this award for Broadway, off-Broadway, and off-Broadway. And it's a very important award, and it carries with it a small but important stipend. The American Theater Wing Seminars on Working in the Theater have tried to bring all of the elements that make up what it is to work in the theater, from the playwright, the producer, the director, the costume, the set designer, lighting designer, and special effects. And we do this as a service to the community. This is the goal of the American Theater Wing, to service the community through the theater. We do it with our seminars, and we do it with our hospital shows, which goes back to the Second World War, and the Stage Door Canteen, which is one more way of bringing theater to those who cannot come to it. We bring theater to hospitals, nursing homes, and AIDS centers. We have a program called Introduction to Broadway, which brings young people from the schools into Broadway to see their very first Broadway show. And along with that program is Theater in Schools, which is people like you see today on this panel, and artists, producers and directors, and the playwrights going out to the schools to talk to the young students on a one-to-one basis on what it is to work in the theater. Most of this is helping the students, enlarging their vocabulary, their goals, their imagination, as well as casting our bread upon the waters. I hope that they will become the future theater goers that we all want, need, and should nourish. And today's seminar on the design is presided over by Professor Tish Dates, who is a theater critic, and as well as a historian of the theater, and Beverly Emmons, who is one of our eminent lighting designers. And I'm going to turn this over to them immediately so they, in turn, can introduce the panel to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mrs. Stevenson. I'm Tish Dace, and it's my pleasure to introduce the rest of the panelists, beginning with the distinguished lighting designer, Beverly Emmons, who's just to my left. Beverly lights theater, dance, and opera all over the United States and Europe. She was originally a dancer, and she has done lighting very sensitively with such eminent choreographers as Martha Graham and Merce Cunningham. She has lit such experimental theater luminaries as Richard Foreman, Meredith Monk, and Robert Wilson, and such music celebrities as Bette Midler and David Byrne. For her work on Broadway, she has won or been nominated for several Tony Awards, and she has won the last 2 years American Theater Wing Design Awards for lighting, respectively, Passion and The Heiress. For her off-Broadway designs, she's won an Obie and 2 Bessies, and if this weren't enough, she's the artistic director of the Lincoln Center Institute, where she provides a really important service by providing terrific examples of the performing arts for large numbers of young people and then helping them to learn how to respond to that sort of work. She also operates there a nifty black box called the Clark Studio Theater. And in her spare time, Beverly does oral histories of unsung heroes, such as electricians who work for dance companies. To my far right is Angela Wendt, the costume designer for the hit musical Rent. In addition to designing it for Broadway, she was with the show from the very beginning, when it was first a little studio workshop at New York Theater Ensemble and then a full production there. She's worked with other theaters in New York, such as New York Stage and Film and the New York Shakespeare Festival at the Public Theater. And it will come as no surprise that this with-it urban contemporary designer has created costumes for the music videos of such artists as Maxi Priest, Shabba Ranks, Nina Hagen, and LL Cool J. She has brought with us a member of the Rent ensemble, Aiko Nakasone, who plays a number of roles in Rent. You'll remember her as Roger's irritating mother on those answering machine messages, and as the perhaps even more irritating television producer who keeps calling Mark Cohen and trying to get him to sell out and start working for her and not be a real artist anymore. Welcome, Aiko. Next to Aiko is Christopher Barreca, the set designer for the poetic dance drama Chronicle of a Death Foretold. He lives on airplanes as nearly as I can make out. He works a great deal in regional theater and in Europe, as well as on Broadway, off-Broadway, in opera, dance, and film. Every time he calls me, he's in a different country or on another coast, and in his spare time, he teaches at Caltech, but his studio is here in New York. You figure it out. Like Angela Wendt, he has just won an American Theater Wing Design Award. Then beyond Beverly is Julie Archer. She has also won an American Theater Wing Design Award just now. She is a very versatile designer. She's designed sets, lights, puppets, and sculptural props for several Mabou Mines shows over a number of years. She lit such important Mabou Mines shows as A Prelude to Death in Venice, Sister Susie Cinema, Wrong Guys, The Warrior Ant, and The Gospel at Colonus. Her set and lighting for Hodge received a Maharam Award. These were the predecessor awards to the American Theater Wing Design Awards. And her set for Vanishing Pictures received an Obie. She has recently designed the set lighting and puppets for Mabou Mines' newest work, Peter and Wendy, and I hope she's going to tell us something about that. And next to Julie is Ruth Maleczech, who is an actor, director, playwright, sometime designer, and who, in my opinion, is one of the half-dozen finest actors in the American theater today. If you missed, and this is not a joke, if you missed her performance of the title role in King Lear, you simply missed the definitive 20th century performance of this role. Welcome. We're very glad to have you with us today to join these designers, Ruth. And then finally, Karen Ten Eyck. I should say that Mabou Mines and Gertrude Stein Theater co-produced an Epidog, and Karen, also representing Gertrude Stein Theater, has just received an American Theater Wing Design Award. She has brought with us a computer and projection system which she developed for that show, and she's going to show us that. She's designed computer environments for a number of different theaters all over the country, including CSC, Manhattan Theater Club, Yale Rep, Opera Delaware, Tulsa Opera, Portland Stage, the Philadelphia Festival Theater for New Plays, and she's done sets for the Cincinnati Playhouse, Indiana Rep, and the Opera Festival of New Jersey. I imagine that Karen and Chris cross paths in airports frequently. Welcome, all of you. Beverly Emmons, would you begin by asking the first question?
Well, there are lots of questions that where one might start with such an interesting group of people. I think one of the first things that we need to be introduced to is this fabulous creature here that Julie has Can you tell us about her?
This is Rose the dog from an Epidog. And she is a Bunraku style puppet operated by 3 puppeteers. The head puppeteer operates her head and right arm. The next puppeteer operates her left arm, and there's a puppeteer on her feet. She's a little bit adapted from traditional Bunraku style puppetry in that her head is sort of operated more like a glove puppet would be. Standard Bunraku is operated with a rod and toggles. But I wanted to give her more flexibility than she would have if she had a rod running in her neck. And standard Bunraku puppets of humans are generally operated vertically. And Lee Brewer wanted her to be able to take dog stances as well as human stances. And so there was a support problem. So those were some of the things that we needed to work out, and that's who Rose is. And she has a tail, which human form puppets don't have, so there was some interesting choreography trying to operate that.
Julie, an Epidog was a sequel to the Shaggy Dog animation and A Prelude to Death in Venice. Did you design Rose in those shows, or did someone else?
Someone else did. Linda Hartinian designed Rose and John in the Shaggy Dog animation, and John was the same puppet used in Prelude.
Did that Rose have the rod?
That Rose was in human form, and she was more, she was built somewhat differently than a traditional Bunraku puppet, but yeah, it was pretty much the same rod and
Are her ears articulate? You're showing me?
Well, I'm not a puppeteer. There's disclaimer number 1. But yes, they do. Barbara Pollitt was the amazing puppeteer on her, the head puppeteer, and she really was able to make her come to life. So her ears go back.
She doesn't like you.
That's when her tail gets, right.
She gets angry, they go back in her tail.
Right.
It's really wonderful.
And her paws are articulated.
When you work with a puppeteer to create something like that, you must work pretty intimately with how they need to operate it and what they're comfortable in doing, as well as what the director wants it to do.
Right, yeah. The puppeteers who worked Rose were really instrumental in the development of how she was built in terms of what she needed to be able to do and what was possible. I was working out of New York at the time, and so I would build her to a point and then send her for them to work with her and to give me feedback, and they'd ship her back, and I'd do some stuff and send her back again. So she evolved over quite a period of time with certain problems being worked out. Barbara, she's light, but the position that Barbara had to hold her in leaves quite a strain on your back.
Yeah,
and
you're doing something like that.
Right, and there's no traditional Japanese Bunraku puppets weigh between, I think it's something like 10 to 60 pounds, and they often have support rods. But their movement is, they're more traditional movement, and it's somewhat stylized and limited compared to what Rose does a ballet dance with a partner in Epidog, and she does all kinds of really amazing movement, and so she's basically, without support, she's pretty much just a pile of rags.
Ruth, you supplied the voice as well as some of the narration for an Epidog. Did Julie's design of Rose influence your voice, your acting? How did the two relate to each other?
Well, Rose, this character Rose, who you first meet in the Shaggy Dog animation, is either a woman who is in love with a man who she thinks treats her as a dog, or it's a dog who wishes she was a woman because she's in love with her master. So basically it's a love story between a man and a dog. In the Shaggy Dog animation, as Julie said, the dog is represented as a woman, the puppet of a woman. In Prelude to Death in Venice, which is the bridge play between Shaggy Dog and an Epidog, you see the male puppet who is constantly making phone calls to women, all kinds of women, girlfriends, mother, agent, friend, constantly on two miniaturized New York street telephones. In an Epidog, both Rose and Bunny, who she murders in the Shaggy Dog, are together in a place called the Bardo, which is the Tibetan land between death and reincarnation. So that's where they meet. And in this version, Rose is a dog, definitely a dog. So the puppet, of course, absolutely determines how she would speak, what tones of voice she would respond in, what the timbre of the voice should be, just as the woman Rose puppet determined other parameters for the voice. So my job in an Epidog is to watch this dog, literally to never take my eyes off of this dog, and to try to make what Julie and Barbara have made together, the physical dog and the articulation of the dog, be realized vocally, so that we make one creature in the end of all. And she has psychology, and she takes puns, and the script is, which is by Lee Brewer, and who's also the director. It's very pun-filled comedy, but it is all in all a way of Rose trying to find her way to her next incarnation, which at the end of an Epidog becomes a warrior ant. That's what she becomes, which is another play.
Is this a good time to show the video? I'm asking whoever is going to turn it on. We have a couple of minutes to show you from an Epidog. If the television people are ready. Okay. Thank you.
Slavery is not cost-effective. Instances of its efficacy are brief, discordant, and uneconomical. Masters become slave poor, as enslavement sows more than it reaps. Less repression breeds apathy. More repression foments revolt. Just a moment. Slavery could not be institutionalized because oppression is bad business. Throughout the ages, only one solution to the bondage in Paris was ever found. The bondage of love. And what was institutionalized was not called slavery anymore. It was called domestication. My sisters, I speak to you as a dog, as the first domesticated animal, and the animal in me tells the dog in me, I was not enslaved. I was domesticated. In the Mahabharata, I am a Sudra. In the capital, a working class. In the lower orders, the duty of a card-carrying member of the serving caste is to provide a master's meal. Up the food chain, the food becomes abstract. We feed egos. We feed neuroses. We are food for everything. Save food for thought.
Then, as if the words food for thought were a cue in the theater, brunch was served.
Thank you.
Wow.
You certainly see why you won the award. Very versatile. Karen, could you tell us, before we actually see the demonstration, something about what you developed with your computer environment system for the same show in Epidog?
Sure. John Reeves and Cheryl Faber, the artistic directors of Gertrude Stein, were interested in doing some projections with using the computer. And we sort of started out thinking about using a program called Director, which is used for multimedia CD-ROM applications. And we were going to do, I guess, what would be called traditional sort of cell animations on the computer, where you draw each frame and then the Director program moves through those cells. But that seemed to me to be an awful lot of work. And to fill a whole show would have been kind of impossible in the time frame, because I was brought on very late in the project. And so what I started to think about was how we could have the animation move with the actor, because I think I don't have that much experience in using video for the theater, but a lot of times when you have a film or something like that, the actor is really married to the speed of the film, and it's hard to, if one of them gets off, it's very hard, to catch up. And so I thought, if we can have something that moves together, if we have a computer operator who can move the projections with the actor, then that could be a very exciting combination. Mm-hmm. And so I proposed this, and one of the staff members, Hal Eager, went out and did some research and found a program for us to use that would, one of the problems is that particularly, this was a very, very wide screen, that it's the computer's ability to redraw, it can be very slow. And so one of Hal's challenges was to find a program that would be able to redraw in real time, and so that it would give a seamless quality instead of kind of a jerky one frame to the next quality, which it often does. And we found one that was pretty good. I mean, it still wasn't perfect. I mean, it still gave us a bit of a jerky quality. But we kind of got used to it and tried to make it work for us. And so I guess we could have a look at it.
So this is projected scenery? This is what is it projected on? Tell us a little bit about the shape of the space.
There are 4 screens at the back of the theater, which are kind of like set up, I think, like this. And there's a card in the computer, a video card in the computer, that splits the signal into 5 different monitors, and 4 of those monitors are on the stage, which are LCD panel projectors, and then the other one goes to the monitor for Julia. This is our computer operator, Julia Carr. And the 5th one has the tools on it so that she can see. It's kind of like a little ground plan with a little camera inside. But let's look at it first, look at the effect first, and then we'll show you how it's done.
Yeah, let's have the demonstration then.
To create the Bardo, Lee had talked a little bit about using the heavens, but not heavens. The heavens is in the stars as opposed to heaven, heaven. And so I thought I would create, he was originally thinking about that, I think, for one part of the show, and I thought, well, let's keep a whole environment for the whole show to give it continuity. And this is where we started out when Rose and Bunny are discussing their lives, and they're floating through this particular part of the Bardo. They're meeting other animals who, meeting but not, other animals are flying by them. We experimented a little bit with having the environment move with the actor, which was the goal. And we found we could do a little bit of that, but to do too much of it, you got a little bit dizzy. And also we had, the program really was not made to do this. It's a virtual reality markup language for the World Wide Web program, and to split it out into that many screens was very stressful for it, and it actually on opening night we crashed in the middle of the second act, and we had like the program header come up and we just shut it off. We have a very, Mr. Brewer is a very understanding director. I don't know many people who would be willing to put up with that, and I told him beforehand that might happen, and he was like, well, okay, well then I'll just get up and I'll make a speech and I'll tell everybody that that's what happens sometimes with new technology. Let's go, can we scoot over to the clove? That's the closest thing. Oh, yes, you can show the tools. Here you can see the ground plan of the space. And that's that little, what's called a Pinocchio that's circling around there is the camera. And that sort of moves on one plane within the environment. And then there's the little camera that you can see with the, looks like a little light. That moves the camera up and down. And you can also do, this is running very fast because it's on a slightly different configuration than we had in the theater. She wasn't talking nearly so fast as she is now. But you can do short animations, too, and we used a couple of them. This was one of them. One of the great, because I've also done very limited work with panty slides, and I found that to be very, very laborious, especially creating things on the computer. It just took absolutely forever to get the high enough resolution to go to film, slide film. Whereas this is very low resolution. It can be created very quickly. I mean, as we're working in the theater, we can make a lot of changes. So it's very flexible, which is also part of the goal, I think.
Why don't we move along and come back to that in between?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I'd just like to ask you one quick question. How do we visit your worldwide website? What's the address?
www.inch.com/tilde, KTENEYCK.
Terrific. Angela Wendt, would you talk to us about Aiko's costume and how you approach the costume design for Rent?
Okay. Basically, Aiko, this is her East Village character. Everybody in the ensemble has a multiple characters. And this is our little, we call her the cyber girl, techno girl, club kid outfit with like the new fabrics. I mean, this all was done 1 year ago. It doesn't even seem that new anymore now. Yeah. it's sort of, to me, it was the balance also between. Aiko is very costumey, actually, as opposed to many of the East Village characters. Sort of the balance to see real people on stage and not do extreme customization. But I guess it's not a great example since she is more costumey than a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. What are the fabrics involved here? The jacket looks like it's partly made out of some sort of hologram material?
Yeah. Hologram print-on fabric. This is just an old parachute overall, coverall actually, that's tacked permanently around her waist. Do you want to get up?
Yeah.
What's this? This is her backpack. Thank you, Aiko.
You've got a baby tee, very, very midriff
Quilted
revealing
baby
there.
tee. Yes.
That was her and the director's idea. I always showed my belly during rehearsal, and belly chain, and then there's two parts to this jacket here with little pins all over, and this is a parachute pants that comes all the way on top, but we just tied it and sort of rigged it so that it looks like it's tied over. And shoes, we put a
Added platform.
Added platform.
Mm-hmm. The baby tee is made of latex or spandex, or what is that?
No, it's a lycra. We
It's a
just
lycra.
quilted it in the front.
I see.
And then there's this fun company, Sears and Robots, who does the little image where the eyes open and close, sort of.
What about the other costumes in red? The street clothes. Where did they come from?
Well, with a lot of people, I really looked at who walked in and who they were, because a lot of them are very young. And in the singing, it was very important to me that how they behave, that I support that with the clothing. And then also at the same time create the whole multitude of characters.
Where did you get the clothing from?
Where did we get the clothing from? For the first time, we did a lot of Salvation Army, Domsies in Brooklyn, thrift shopping, little shops in the East Village. Claudia made a lot of things. We ended up making a paper coat, which was great. An ongoing collage that Claudia did at night at New York Theater Workshop in the lobby. And we just created
that was in the
fabrics
studio
too.
workshop before you did a full
New York
production?
Theater
New York
Workshop,
Theater
yeah.
Workshop.
Yeah.
And then what? The next design?
Well, the next design, the incredible thing the first time around was too that we had about 4 feet of snow during most of the time. So we ended up doing the whole show pretty much in 5 or 6 days, because we said, well, the weather's not getting any better and tech is around the corner. So we did it in a couple of days. And then we had only 4 weeks to move it to Broadway after we realized. And then all of a sudden, from just creating a picture on stage, we needed 240 costumes, because you need doubles.
240 costumes?
Yes, with doubles and triples and understudies. So, of course, Salvation Army doesn't have doubles and triples. So it was a whole different ball game all of a sudden, which is really strange, too, because you start out with authentic clothing from Salvation Army and places like that, my own closet, wherever. And then all of a sudden, you know, you have to just make all these things.
Angela, are you saying that you designed and somebody built in 4 weeks 240 costumes?
Well, no, we didn't build all 240, but a big part of that. And we shopped, yeah, we were.
How did you do that?
We didn't sleep, but we worked day and night. It was pretty crazy. It was very insane. We had a very good, I had a very good team of people working with me, otherwise it's not possible.
Do you have a union costume?
Do I have what? A union?
Yes.
Yes.
And what happens when you go to the Salvation Army for clothes? What happens there with the union?
there's no difficulty with designers.
No,
the designers
perfectly fine.
can lay your hands on anything and declare it
Whatever.
what you
It's
want.
your choice where
You can do that.
Exactly.
You don't have to abide by costume or by.
No, you don't have to make everything. Or
How
buy
more do you
anything
have? Do you have to
special.
abide by costs, the union costs?
Not to
Whatever
buy
it
things.
is, it is.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it is.
What's your background? How did you get to be a costume designer?
I started in fashion first, knitwear and weaving. And then I actually did a lot of different things and a lot of traveling. And then I started assisting a fabulous designer, Gabrielle Barry, and assisted her for 3 years. And then being German, I felt, gee, you know, I didn't study this, so I went back to Berlin as a guest student to the university in Berlin for setting costume design, and was over there for barely a year. And it was really good to be there, but I really felt I learned a lot assisting and working in the profession. So I came back after a year and started designing my own shows.
Angela,
Can I ask, if we go around to find out where they started, where they came from?
Oh my, that's scary. The very beginning, or how I got into the theater? Do you mean how I got
which
into
comes first?
Well, the chicken or the egg, I guess. Well, I got into the theater strangely. I was a musician. I was a musician through college. I didn't study the theater in college at all. But I worked in union scene shops to put myself through college. I worked at a place called Atlas Scenic Studio, which is up in Bridgeport. And I went to the University of Connecticut. I was a Connecticut resident. That was a good place to go if you wanted to save money. And by working through the scene shop there, I just strangely got fascinated with the theater and felt like musically, particularly because I wasn't going to be B.B. King. I discovered that, although I love jazz and play jazz in clubs a lot. And I felt like I was trapped in the other part of the musical world, which is repeating things over and over and over again. And the theater was creative, and it allowed me to do things. And I had a lot of really nice people who kind of kept pushing me, you know, in the shops there, saying, do it, just go for it. So then I ended up going to Yale, strangely enough. And that's sort of how I got into the profession.
I took time off before going to school, and then came to New York and started working with Mabou Mines, and just kept working with Mabou Mines. That's it.
I studied graphic design and advertising in undergraduate school, and I worked in that for a number of years. And then I did a community theater show. I did the sets and costumes for that, and I thought this is what I really wanted to do. It's a lot more creative and artistically satisfying than working in advertising. And then I kept doing some community stuff, and then I got very serious, and I thought I really need to go someplace and study this. And so I went to Yale, and graduated in '91. And have been trying to work my way through the system since then.
Chris, I'd love for you and Beverly to explain how you created the magic of your magic realist set. The windows kept appearing and disappearing, and I know the two of you must have collaborated very closely together. How did you do it?
Well, there was a third person there.
Yeah,
very
important.
Well, there was Jules.
There was Jules
and there was
Fisher.
Graziella, I would say. It was very important. I would start by saying, what did you and Grazi talk about for the creation of that
Well, you know, it's
wall?
interesting. She talked a lot about growing up and how, you know, visions did appear, you know. She saw, and I don't want to say she saw the Virgin Mary up in the corner of the room, although she sort of did say that she saw, you know, angels in her room, and it was very real. It wasn't that in that culture, you know, we have a hard time because we've gotten
Grazi
so
is
distant.
from Argentina.
Yeah, from Argentina. And I'm sorry, I just banged the microphone.
Yeah.
But, you know, and in that, she brought me a lot of information and a lot of, you know, pictures and photographs from, you know, things she had in some books, photographs from photographers from there.
We're talking about the director, choreographer.
Yes, I'm sorry,
Chronicle,
Graziella
Daniela.
Daniela. And we both worked with her before, and we spent a lot of time just exploring how to deal with the fact that actually this is a very non-conventionally structured piece. You know, it's a novel in which you're told what happens in the beginning, and the actual action of the piece is to discover who's responsible. The writer is, he's dealing a lot with social issues, so we were trying to grapple with how to deal with the retelling, the way we remember things. And she had one picture which was fascinating. It was a photograph of a town square in which there was a shadow. There was just a tree and a shadow of a tree, and there was some stain on the ground. But you looked at it, and there was a moment that you knew had passed that was very frightening in a way, but also mysterious and important. And we kind of latched onto that picture, which was in a square somewhere in South America. And then we struggled a lot. I must say, we did a workshop of the piece, which I think a lot of you guys, we do that a lot. And we struggled with this thing of the chronicler, because there's a big thing in the piece of this person who's telling the story, and we had a person in the house speaking the lines, and we had somebody standing on stage speaking the lines, and we tried to actually, we thought maybe we'd have Marquez on stage, and we decided that was a bad idea, although we did try it. And what happened was I kept doodling in these workshops, and which I don't have anymore. They've all disappeared, all these sketches. That's just the way things happen. You lose these things. You end up with the detritus, just the things that get left over, which is too bad. But, of course, what we do is what's on stage, not anyway, we all know that. But at any rate, I kept drawing this figure, this shadow of a figure up the proscenium and outside the proscenium and all over the place. And at some point, Graziella said, I really feel like he's a presence. He's right there. So we ended up kind of that as our central image, strangely enough. I guess, I have the model.
You want to show us the model?
Well,
yeah,
I should say what's funny.
More sense.
Yeah, what's funny is that...
Yeah, let's show people.
This is the actual model. This is a photograph of the actual image. I have to say this was a complete accident. I hate admitting that, but of course we all know that the best things come out of accidents. Everybody in this room knows that. The accident was that we had the idea of the shadow. We were going to have the character, which he did, walk up on stage and stand. And we had positioned, we had spent a lot of time, in matching that shadow. So when he walked into view, suddenly the shadow that you'd been looking at for 10 minutes was his shadow. But what would happen is we got into the theater, and Beverly turned on the lights on the scrim. We're all sitting there, and it wasn't what we didn't think we were going to see through it. Now I know it's really basic, and you would think that we would know that, but we were sitting there, and we were seeing everything that was going on upstage, and we were a bit mortified at first, and then we all went, it really says everything. And I actually think it was Beverly who said that. She said, wait, guys, just look at what's there. Stop talking, because we were talking about we were going to have to black it out or what we were going to do.
What we were seeing through was this beautiful set of doors.
Which are the fatal doors.
The fatal doors that the character comes through, against which he gets killed, which we then went on to recreate. And the actor making the shadow was standing where he was about that size, coming up from the audience.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. Yeah. So show us the wall.
The wall, wow. What's the problem is I think this model has, I'm not sure I can actually pull it out. It's the problem, I didn't check this model before I came here. Oh my God, it's all glued together.
What was interesting about this, what was wonderful was that Chris had made...
Make it work to your advantage, Chris,
we go.
Come on.
Go ahead, well, we can imagine it.
Well, Chris had made a wall, that, this doesn't even come out. Yeah, take the wall.
We're going to just do something we always do. And you're going to all hate me when I do this. But we do this all the time. Because I'm going to rip it out of the model. God, boy, I have very good assistants. And they...
very strong.
There we go.
There we go.
Well, go ahead. You started to talk.
Well, yeah, what you saw was a wall, the back wall of the theater, except obviously structured and painted and very beautiful, that had images on it, and then things came out of it, like this pair of doors was out in the middle of the space, but in fact they fit and disappeared and became part of the wall. You go, hon.
The idea came out of that is that we didn't, given Marquez's work, we didn't want to be... we didn't want to be scenic, I guess is the way to put it. That it's political. It's in your face, and both Graziella and I, for a long time, felt we just wanted to paint the back wall of the theater. And oddly enough, the doors came out of a thing we were supposed to be in the originally, because this did start out as a dance piece. It came to Broadway because both Bernie Gerstein and Andre felt like they saw the workshop and they decided that's what they wanted to do. But at the time we were looking at, and help me out, it's on Theater Row. It's like the Joyce. It's a looking down sort of theater. I can't remember. Anyway, we were trying to
off-Broadway house?
Yeah, on 40. And then what happened was there was this huge hole. There were no entrances. The theater's like 20 feet deep, but there's this huge loading door, and we said, oh, we'll paint the wall, the theater, and then we'll put our own doors in there, and we'll have these doors pop out. And so what happened is when we moved into the setting that we ended up doing, which was the Plymouth, that idea became essential, because what happened is that all the visions came out of this wall. Things would appear from the wall. There was this window that seemed glued to the wall, and then the window moved to another place where it was needed for another window.
Then it opened when it got over there.
And then it opened,
Right.
and strange things would happen behind it. So the visions came always out of the environment that we were in.
You turned a disadvantage into a really exciting positive design principle.
That's what all designers do.
Yes. Yes. It's terrific. How did you actually make those doors appear to just materialize out of nowhere?
Doors or windows?
Windows, excuse me, windows.
Windows. Well, there were two windows. Did these open even?
Yeah, they do. They actually do in the model. They may have sold. Yeah, there they are.
Yeah.
There's
It was
a window
now
there.
you see it, now you don't.
There's another window up here. People, and then the frame. Another window there, and the frame hung in front of it.
Yes.
So, and the frame was on something that moved it. So that was either here or it went down there, turning as it went. And then I had some moving light equipment that had a gobo cut to match that frame. So, and we had two of those kinds, so that as the window moved in a sort of a stately move from one place to the other, we suddenly lit it with two more frames, so suddenly it became like three frames, one of them tumbling and moving, and another one moving with different colors. So yeah, it became surreal.
Which again,
that way.
strangely, is what made it possible, because when the window moved by, I have to say, it's always those things in theater. I imagined a puppet. I imagined a little puppet bridge, and it was going to be this little puppet window, and I was informed, I guess, quite logically by the shops. They said, that's a window, it's traveling a long way. That's a long line, that's those long arms. So then they created this mechanism. Well, the mechanism, boy, it sounded like a jet engine taking off.
It was clumsily
It was
done
clumsy.
by the
Eventually they figured it out. But what happened was we realized that the movement wasn't what we imagined, because we imagined a window sort of tumbling like a puppet and everything. And so, Beverly said, added these things, and suddenly then the window seemed like we imagined it. Which was
Well, there was a step in between, and that was that Jules Fisher was going to design the lighting for this piece, and he had been very involved with the ideas with Graziella, and I got a call from him in April, something like that, saying, please, he had to go do Victor Victoria, whose dates had changed, so he couldn't do Chronicle, but he very much wanted to do Chronicle because he'd been so involved, and so he had the light plot essentially finished in his head, if not entirely on paper, but would I cue it? I said, sure. What an up to work in a light plot designed by Jules Fisher. It was extraordinary. He has the imagination and the strength of character and the reputation to get the kind of equipment that normally managers don't want to pay for. So, we had four moving lights, and the template that matched the window had been specially etched to match exactly that window. We had 5K Fresnels with color scrollers on them, for diagonal backlights and diagonal front lights, and we had about 400 lighting units, which isn't a lot for a musical nowadays, but 138 of them had color changers on it. So each of those 134 lights had a choice of 38 colors. So it was just delicious. You could really paint. You could really paint with color. Yeah. It was fun.
The one other thing what's funny about the walls, like you notice there was some bursts. You mentioned templates. We had this idea at one time. Well, bird imagery was something just subliminally for Graziella was really, really important. I mean, and it was subliminal, and it was actually painted into the walls. You can see there's a strange kind of change of texture. There are actually 3 birds that create a flower. You don't really see it, and I'm not sure actually most of the audience ever noticed that. And what was good about this, I'll never forget, there was one moment we flashed these templates of birds on there, and we all went, no. No,
one of those
no.
ideas.
No, that was one of those things that...
Sometimes you can't be too literal, and
Yeah, well, also it is a little bit about, you know, when you ask about magic realism, that word, I know both Graziella and I think other people, you want to embrace the word on one time, but at the same time you kind of want to go like this.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it doesn't necessarily talk about, you know, what it is that you're trying to do, you know what I mean, or the action or the event you're trying to create. And it's become a kind of catchphrase for certain things, a catch-all for a certain way of imagining things. And so it's interesting, most of the things we did actually came out of necessity. And those were the fun things, like the food, you know, people always talk about the food jumping off the table. Why did you do the funny? Well, it was sitting in rehearsal, and there was this 28-foot-long table.
It flew in.
Covered with food. Well, it didn't flow in originally. It was sitting there, you know, in rehearsal, in the workshop. There's this huge table. And I felt like, well, in our imaginations, what would this table do? Because I can't get it anywhere. I can't go anywhere with this table. It doesn't fit over there or over there.
So
and we just said,
so
it needs to dance, you know. It needs to float away. And how, isn't that what happens in our dreams? Things float away, you know, something else or in our memory. And the food was completely out of, these 2 dancers jumped on the table and danced, you know. They got up on the table and danced.
So you had to get the food out of the way.
And actually it was Graziella who said, she said, you know, kind of sheepishly, because she thought, God forbid anybody would do this. She said, well, couldn't the food just kind of like go like this?
And they did it.
So it flew.
So it flew.
No, it was puppetized in a way.
It was puppet food.
The entire table flew in
Yeah.
with the food apparently sitting on it. And then they all had their own strings, and then they all just took off from the surface of the table. It was wonderful.
That's great. Angela, has Bloomingdale's really created a rent-inspired line of clothing?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about this? Do you get any kind of money out of this? Or?
Not yet. There are lawyers involved right now.
Otherwise, are you flattered, pleased?
Not. It's so hard to talk about this because, in a way, it was flattering. On the other hand, if somebody just goes ahead and, you know, imitates or copies what you did on stage and puts it in a store, like Bloomingdale's, especially with a play like Rent and what Rent stands for, it really was very strange. A very, you know, gives you a weird feeling.
Exactly the fighting, selling out to commercial interests that the show is about to start off with.
So.
Yeah. It's ironic. How did you get hired? You hadn't done a great deal of work in the New York theater. We all know that actors go and audition. How do designers get hired?
I worked with Michael Greif, the director, before. We did Marisol at the Public Theater. And he called me up and he said, I'm doing this workshop. We have no money. Can you do the sets too? So I did set and costumes after I read the script and I liked it. And that was 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago. That's usually how, you know, you work with somebody once, and if it worked out, you look for a chance to work together again.
How did you get the original job with Marisol?
Through Gabriel Barry, the designer who I assisted.
Right.
You know, which is also the other way how you get jobs. Hopefully people you assist will also recommend you for jobs that they don't want to do or can't do or whatever.
Christopher, you'd worked with Grazia before. How did you get the first job working with her?
Well, you know, strangely, it's the oddest thing. I you know, always divulging these things. It doesn't matter. I mean, it was very funny. I did a musical that I didn't do about 6 years ago in which Jules was involved.
Stop.
And it was
What I
called...
didn't do.
Stop. What does that mean?
It means that I got involved with it, and then I decided, and I'm going to not mention it because I think that would be wrong, but it was a particular director, and we just didn't see eye to eye, and I very quickly said, look, I'm not the right person for this. You should find somebody else. But in the meetings that I had with Jules on that, for some reason, Jules decided that Graziella might like to work with me, and that's actually how it happened. And I really respect Jules for that, because I was a pretty youngish person the first time that I worked with Graziella, and you know, she's worked with Santo and a lot of other designers, and I feel that that was it was a privilege for me. And he was right. I love working with her, you know. It's the energy. When we talk, we both talk at the same time, and we both listen to each other at the same time. I know that's something that maybe some of us know happens a lot. We just managed to continue that on for hours and hours and hours, and it's the greatest pleasure you can have.
Karen, how did you hook up with Gertrude Stein originally?
I went to school with John Reeves, one of the artistic directors, and I did several of his plays at Yale. And then when he and his wife Cheryl started their company, I started working with them. And they were also working with Lee, and we did a workshop, a reproduction, I guess, of Red Horse animations using some World Wide Web technology to do projections for that. And so that's how I met Lee.
And Julie, how about you and Mabou Mines? How did you originally get with them?
Well, like I said, I came to New York and had a friend who was working with the company and sort of hung around. I was an artist, a sculptor at the time, and Ruth asked me, well, I started out as a babysitter, actually.
Ah, see, I knew.
Took care of the children. It's great, actually. And Ruth asked me to design the set for a project that she was doing at Recherche, a studio that Mabou Mines started. And then asked me to design the lights for something else. Just didn't know how to wire a plug, didn't know the first thing about it, but...
Yeah, Julie's a real original because if she doesn't know how to do something, she figures out. Rose is the first puppet in a production that Julie's made, the first that she's made that's been in a production.
I have to be rude and bring this panel, bring to this panel's attention the fact that we have to close it. I couldn't be sorrier because it's been absolutely fascinating to hear what goes on behind the scenes and before it becomes the scene. This is the American Theater Wing's seminars on design, and the panelists today have all won the awards from the American Theater Wing on the 1996 designs. They are lighting people and costume and set and special effects, and they have been absolutely fascinating as they've explained their craft to you. This is one of a series of the American Theater Wing seminars on working in the theater, coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. And today's co-chairs have been Professor Tish Dates, who is a theater critic, and Beverly Emmons, who is lighting design. And I thank you and I thank this panel for being with us and sharing your knowledge and techniques with us. Thank you very, very much.
No film in the camera.